Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a quiet farmer discovers an entire HOA has invaded his 160-year-old family farm with fake permits, folding chairs, and a coach bus, he doesn't get mad. He hits record. What follows is a modern-day showdown between heritage and hubris, and the internet takes sides. I woke up just after dawn, same as always. The light was just starting to creep through the kitchen window, casting that soft golden glow on the old maple countertop I'd refinished myself 2 summers ago. I poured a cup of black coffee, pulled on my boots, and stepped out onto the porch of a house that'd been in my family since the day President Lincoln was buried. The boards creaked under me. Real, honest wood. Not that synthetic composite crap they slap on those HOA boxes across the ridge. I lit a cigarette, took one sip of the bitter brew, and that's when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Kentucky area code, though. I thumbed it open expecting some robocall, but what I saw made me stop cold. Good morning. We're already at the farm. Could you open the north gate? GPS says the entrance is on that side. I blinked. Read it again. The farm? What the hell? I hadn't scheduled anything. No tours, no guests, no maintenance crews. Hell, I hadn't even had a visitor in weeks, and that's exactly how I liked it. My land, 120 acres of old soil and older buildings, was not a damn Airbnb. I grabbed the keys, shotgun out of habit, slung it behind the truck seat, and rode out on my ATV toward the north side of the property. I took the long path around the cornfield. As I crested the hill, my gut twisted. They were there. I counted at least 20 cars parked in the ditch and along the gravel road, minivans, SUVs, and even a goddamn coach bus. Like this was some kind of guided tour to the goddamn Smithsonian. People were already offloading coolers, folding chairs, clipboards. Some wore matching t-shirts with a tree and the words Stonewood Grove building together. I rolled up closer and saw kids climbing over the split-rail fence like it was a jungle gym. A few adults were snapping selfies in front of the old grist mill near the creek. Someone had a goddamn picnic blanket laid out on my great-grandfather's stone foundation. But what really sent me over the edge? There, zip-tied to my north gate, was a flimsy laminated sign. Private HOA meeting reserved. Authorized access only. I sat there on the ATV for a few seconds, just blinking. Processing. What? The actual hell. I dismounted, pulled out my phone, and hit record. Walked slowly along the fence line, capturing faces, vehicles, license plates, even the moron who was trying to stage an Instagram photo with one foot in the horse trough like it was a spa. Then I flipped the camera on myself. This is Travis Malone, owner of the Malone Historical Farm, family estate since 1865. What you're looking at is unauthorized trespass. No one has asked permission. No one has been invited. This is private property, historical protected. I ended the clip and immediately called the sheriff's department. Dispatch, came the voice, too chipper for this hour. Yes, I need to report trespassers, Northgate, Malone Farm. At least 60 people. Some have already crossed onto the property. There was a pause. Did you invite them, sir? No, ma'am. I didn't invite a damn convention. I hung up, then marched to the gate. Hey! I shouted, loud enough for the camera to pick up. This is private land. Y'all need to turn around right now. You're trespassing on a federally registered historical site. A few people froze. Others looked confused, like they'd stumbled into the wrong backyard barbecue. One lady in a sun hat raised her hand like she was in school. Is this not the community unity meeting? She asked. It's not, I said, and it sure as hell ain't your community. That's when I spotted the programs. Printed handouts. Some folks were holding them like tour guides at Disneyland. I snatched one off a folding table someone had the gall to set up next to my walnut tree. Stonewood Grove, HOA Unity Gathering, historic farmhouse of the region, curated by Karen Stafford. My blood pressure nearly ruptured my damn spine. Karen, of course, president of Stonewood Grove HOA, queen of beige paint, ruler of sod. The woman had already tried twice to suggest I partner with the community to preserve the cultural heritage of the area. That was code for, let us turn your family's farm into our HOA's petting zoo. Now she'd skipped the asking part entirely. I filmed the program up close for my records, then pivoted and yelled toward the crowd. If anyone's already stepped foot past this gate, your face is on camera, your car's license plates recorded. And you can explain to the sheriff why you're having a party on land you don't own. A few people started backing away toward their vehicles. Others pretended they hadn't heard me. I saw one guy in flip-flops look around, shrug, and keep eating his damn trail mix like this was all some misunderstanding. As I stood there, recording every moment, a woman tripped on the porch steps of my grandfather's house and landed hard on her knee, cursing. Another kid knocked over a ceramic planter from the 1920s. No one apologized. I didn't raise my voice again. I didn't get angry. I didn't wave my shotgun. I just kept filming, calm, focused, and already planning how many zeros I was going to add to the lawsuit. The land had seen war, drought, tornadoes, and politicians. But this felt personal. Karen had just declared war. 15 minutes later, just as the crowd started thinning out a little, some people realizing they might be in legal hot water, others still pretending this was all just a quirky mix-up, I heard the slow crunch of tires over gravel. I looked up the hill and saw a black BMW X5 gliding toward my gate like it owned the damn place. Of course, she stepped out in full glory. Pristine cream slacks, coral blouse that screamed real estate brochure, oversized sunglasses, and that condescending half-smile she always wore like a badge. Behind her came two assistants, twins in business casual with clipboards and Bluetooth earpieces, like she was filming a reality show called HOA, Homeland Command. Karen Stafford, president of the Stonewood Grove HOA, had arrived. She didn't so much as glance at me at first. Nope. Straight toward the people still on my land. She gave them a quick wave like a damn queen waving to the peasants at the fair. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming," she called out like it was Sunday brunch and not a civil offense in progress. I stayed where I was, arms crossed, camera still recording. Finally, she turned and looked at me. The smile sharpened. "Mr. Malone," she said sweetly, "I'm glad to see you out here. I was hoping you'd take the opportunity to meet the community." I didn't move. "I didn't invite the community, Karen." She let out a breathless little laugh, like I'd just told a silly joke. "Travis, come on, you knew about the gathering." "No, Karen," I said, my voice flat. "I didn't. And I'm gonna need you and everyone else off my land. Now." She blinked, just for a second. I saw it. A flicker of surprise. Then she shifted, reloaded her confidence, and pulled a sheet of paper from her assistant's folder like it was a magic scroll. "We have permission," she said, holding it up. "From the county. This is a registered cultural event under the Community Heritage Engagement Program. You're actually benefiting from this exposure. It's win-win." I took the paper and read it. Looked official. Fancy logo at the top. Stamped with a seal that looked half legit. But I knew that seal. Hell, I'd been to enough zoning meetings to recognize it was a fake. The county logo was wrong shade of green. The font was from a PowerPoint template, for Christ's sake. "This is bullshit," I said, handing it back. "You forged this." Karen's lips pursed. "That's a serious accusation. So is breaking and entering. Guess we're all feeling spicy today." She stepped closer, lowering her voice, which somehow made her sound even more arrogant. "We're not enemies, Travis. The HOA is trying to uplift this whole area. We bring people together. We promote heritage, tourism, development. What you have here, it could be something amazing. You just need to let go of this rugged, individualist fantasy." I stared at her like she'd just suggested we paint the barn hot pink. "You walked onto my land without permission. You held an event without notice. You let strangers climb on my great-grandfather's house. One of your guests just sprained her damn ankle on a porch she had no business standing on. And now you're telling me this is some kind of civic good." Karen smiled like a cobra. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be. This can still be a positive thing. For everyone." Then she added, as if she were dropping the ace card in poker, "The truth is, we've been in contact with the county's heritage liaison. We had an understanding. It might not be on paper yet, but these things don't always require formal steps when it's in the public interest." I wanted to laugh, but my jaw clenched too tight for it. "You mean you convinced some underpaid clerk to look the other way?" "That's not permission, Karen. That's a lie." She folded her arms and looked down at the dusty ground like I was the one being unreasonable. "You just don't get it," she muttered. "There's a bigger vision here. Community gardens, summer concerts, educational programs. We were even going to propose funding renovations. Make this place a real destination." "Make it yours, you mean?" She looked up, startled. "Let me be very clear," I said, loud enough for the camera and the crowd. "This land is not for rent, not for sale. Not for commandeering by a goddamn suburban empire that thinks it's entitled to every inch of Kentucky it can throw beige stucco on. The assistant shuffled nervously. I heard a couple of people from the crowd murmuring. And that's when the real cherry on top arrived. Sirens. 2 sheriff's department cruisers rolled up slowly, kicking dust as they came, lights flashing but no urgency in their pace. Officers climbed out, one with a clipboard already in hand. Karen immediately turned toward them, flashing that smile that probably worked wonders at HOA cocktail hours. "Oh, thank God you're here," she started, walking toward the lead deputy. "There's been a misunderstanding. We were told we could use this property under community development." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, we've already reviewed the call and GPS records from Mr. Malone's security system. We'll need to speak with everyone who entered the property. Please step aside." Karen turned toward me again. This time, the smile was gone. "You really want to escalate this?" "No, Karen," I said. "You already did." She stood frozen as the officers began taking statements, noting the IDs of everyone still hanging around and asking for the forged permission letter. One of them called over the woman who fell. She was now seated on the grass, holding her ankle and glaring at Karen like she'd been conned into a Ponzi scheme. Karen's assistants started backing toward their car, probably calculating how fast plausible deniability could get them out of this. I stood there, camera still rolling, still calm. She thought she was unstoppable. She forgot she was standing on a battlefield with 6 generations of me behind every inch of it. The sheriff cruisers finally rolled off my property, kicking up dust clouds that hung in the warm morning air. The crowd dispersed in clusters, some embarrassed, some irritated, and a handful still acting like they'd been victims of some unjust historical tragedy because they couldn't have a picnic on land they didn't own. Karen left without looking at me again, just a stiff posture, tight jaw, clipped strides. But her retreat didn't feel like victory. It felt like the pause before a storm. An hour later, when the silence finally settled over the farm again, I walked the perimeter. The damage hit harder than any confrontation could have. The west fence, split in 2 places where someone had clearly forced a cooler through. The railing on the old wraparound porch snapped clean off. A carved wooden post my great-great-grandfather had chiseled by hand stood there with a fresh gouge in it like a scar. I found initials and a heart drawn on the barn wall with permanent marker, and on the backside someone spray-painted a hashtag. A goddamn hashtag. It said, HOA Life. I stood there staring at that neon green paint, feeling something burn deep under my ribs. This farm had survived 160 years of storms, wars, droughts, and bank threats. And now, a mob of HOA tourists tagged it like a dive bar bathroom. Fine. If they wanted war, I could play 21st century warfare too. I wiped my hands on my jeans, walked back into the house, set up my tripod on the porch, and hit record. I didn't bother with dramatic lighting or inspirational background music. Just me, a coffee mug, and the farm behind me. I introduced myself, laid out exactly what happened, every detail, every clip from my phone. I cut in footage from the trespassers climbing the fence. I zoomed in on the printed programs with Karen's name. And then, calmly, with no anger in my voice, I said, "This is why private land matters. This is why consent matters. My family has cared for this place for over a century and a half. And no HOA gets to reserve it because they printed a sign on laminate. I uploaded it to YouTube. HOA invades my 160-year-old family farm. You won't believe what they did." Then I clipped shorter segments. Karen's bullshit. Permission letter, the cops showing up, and posted those to TikTok. I figured maybe a few locals would see it. Maybe my nephew Ryan would call me and laugh. Within 20 minutes, the first video hit 10,000 views. By lunch, it passed 100,000. Comments poured in. A whole HOA trying to colonize someone's farm. Wild. Dude, this feels like a National Treasure sequel. HOA edition. I would die for this man's porch. And then the best one. Sue them. Make them pay for every splinter on that porch railing. TikTok loved the rage. YouTube loved the receipts. My phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications, shares, tags. My niece texted, "Uncle T, you're trending." You're literally trending. Meanwhile, in the real world, the HOA launched their own counterattack. I first noticed it when I checked my email and saw a forwarded chain from someone in the Stonewood Grove neighborhood. The HOA president, our dear Karen, had sent a mass email to all residents of their subdivision and to half the mailing list of the County Historical Society. The subject line read, Local Farmer Blocks Community Heritage Initiative. She wrote things like, We attempted to include Mr. Malone in a cultural partnership. He refused to collaborate and escalated the situation unnecessarily. Public land should serve public needs. Public land. They were calling my land public. I read that line 3 times. My face felt hot. Within hours, local Facebook mom groups had opinions. Some comments sided with her. He doesn't even live near us. Why does he get to gatekeep land? Others didn't. Because he owns it. This is insanity. Then came the cherry on top. A link landed in my inbox, an article from the local community magazine, the Stonewood Monthly. Historic farm owner refuses collaboration with HOA cultural event. Participants left disappointed after being denied access to heritage site. Denied access to my own damn porch. I didn't bother responding. I just posted screenshots to my socials and captioned them. The propaganda machine is awake. Views doubled again. People began sending me offers. A lawyer from Ohio offered free consultation. A rancher in Texas messaged, If you need bodies, we're road trip ready. Someone from New York offered to redesign my logo for merch. I wasn't planning to start a movement, but apparently the internet was starving for one, because when rich suburban bureaucrats try to seize land that isn't theirs, that strikes a nerve. Late that night, I walked the porch again, flashlight sweeping over the carved initials, the snapped railing, the footprints in the flower beds that belonged to my grandmother. I should have been angry, but all I felt was clarity. My phone buzzed again. A new TikTok comment. Keep filming. Sunlight kills mold. Right. Sunlight it is. This wasn't just about trespassing anymore. It was about power. And I was done letting people like Karen assume I'd stay quiet. The next few days blurred into a strange mix of media attention, legal paperwork, and unsolicited offers for brand deals. I got emails from survival gear companies, a bourbon brand, even one chain of outdoor griddle grills that wanted to sponsor my heritage defense campaign. I ignored most of it. What I didn't ignore were the emails from viewers who worked in law, in state registries, or local journalism. They were digging, sending me copies of HOA bylaws, archived planning commission memos, even budget records of Stonewood Grove from the last 3 years. And what I started to see was a pattern. Karen didn't just pull this stunt out of thin air. She'd been preparing to lay claim to my farm in the public eye for months, funding local heritage talks, pitching partnerships to the county, registering educational events under vague umbrella nonprofits that all traced back to HOA accounts. Nothing blatantly illegal yet, but all pointing to a deliberate, quiet annexation strategy. She didn't want to ask for my land. She wanted to convince everyone it had always been hers. So I doubled down. Started recording everything, calls, conversations, every walk of the perimeter. I wasn't paranoid, I was preparing, and that's when Dan showed up. He emailed me first, said he was a history grad student working on a thesis about rural legacy farms in the southeastern U.S. Sounded harmless. His name was Daniel G. Herbert. Said he saw my videos and was inspired. Offered to come out and help document the farm for educational purposes. I agreed, cautiously, asked for his university credentials. He sent me a PDF of his ID from Western Kentucky University. It looked legit, if a little blurry. I Googled him, but found nothing beyond a dead LinkedIn and one Medium blog with a single post from 2 years ago. Still, I figured, fine. I'd keep it public, keep the cameras rolling, and see what happened. If he was genuine, he'd help the case. If he wasn't, I'd catch him. He arrived that Saturday afternoon in a dusty gray Prius with a bumper sticker that read, History Never Dies. Tall, clean-shaven, mid-30s, wearing jeans too new for farm work and boots too clean for hiking. Travis, he said, shaking my hand with a slightly damp grip. It's an honor. Hope you don't mind being recorded, I said, gesturing to the camera on the porch. Not at all, he smiled, eyes already scanning the barn like he was casing it for resale. We walked the property. He asked questions, took notes, snapped 100 photos, but his questions started getting odd. So, do you store any old firearms on site for display? Do you get many unrecorded visitors? Ever had livestock accidents? Or security issues? Would you say your insurance coverage is above state minimum? He said it all casually, like it was part of his research, but I saw it for what it was, probing. He asked to see the inside of the tool shed. I led him there, unlocked it, and let him poke around. He pulled out a file from an old drawer marked Plumbing 2010 and flipped through it like he expected to find state secrets inside. I watched, arms crossed. Then he accidentally left his phone behind when he stepped out. I took a chance, scrolled through his open apps, and found a draft email to someone named K. Stafford admin Stonewood Grove org. Not exactly subtle. The subject line: interior photos and layout access. Entry successful. Entry successful. I slipped his phone back into the exact spot, locked the shed, and said nothing. When he returned, I handed him the phone. "You dropped this." He blinked, looked like he wanted to ask something, thought better of it. "Thanks." As the sun began to set, he packed up, gave me the same damp handshake, and said he'd be in touch, drove off without looking back. I didn't post about him right away. I waited. 2 days later, someone leaked internal HOA emails to me. Burner Gmail, untraceable. One thread was labeled Asset Gathering, Target Site, Malone Farm. It included a list of concerns to flag in case of emergency HOA action: potential weapon storage, improper fencing, security gaps, insurance gaps, legal isolation status. The footnote read, HD will confirm and provide secondary photo sets. Focus, interior and outbuildings. HD Heritage Dan. I uploaded a new video, no commentary, no rant, just raw footage from the shed, his probing questions, and a blurred screenshot of the email. Caption: they sent a spy. It went viral in 4 hours. Even HOA members from other states began commenting, saying this crossed every ethical line they'd ever seen. Lawyers in my inbox now weren't just offering help, they were furious. One guy from Colorado said he'd sue pro bono just for the principle of it. Karen didn't say a word. Not yet. But I could feel it. The mask had slipped, and what stared back wasn't just some arrogant HOA president. It was someone used to getting away with everything. The morning I filed the lawsuit, the courthouse smelled like mildew and overcooked coffee. The clerk behind the glass didn't blink when I handed her the stack of papers, 2 inches thick and sealed with more documentation than most murder cases. She gave it a quick glance, nodded, and stamped it like she was processing a parking ticket. But I knew what I'd just done. This wasn't a complaint. It was a loaded cannon aimed at the crumbling facade of the HOA. The suit named the entire HOA board, with Karen Stafford at the top like a moldy cherry on a rotten sundae. I accused them of criminal trespass, civil trespass, negligent damage to historic property, misrepresentation of authority, unauthorized use of private land for commercial purposes, and public endangerment via fraudulent planning. And that was just the opening volley. My lawyer, a sharp old bull named Eli Crane, retired litigator turned angry hobbyist, helped me draft it all. He'd watched my videos, read every leaked email, and damn near kissed me on the forehead when I gave him a folder labeled Physical Evidence, Chronological. We didn't go for the throat, we went for the spine. But I knew Karen wouldn't go down quiet. And I was right. That evening, just as I was pouring bourbon into a cracked mason jar and letting the weight of the day settle, my phone lit up with a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Malone," the voice said, smooth and unhurried. "This is Edward Jameson, liaison from the County Cultural Development Office. I'm calling to clarify a few details regarding a misunderstanding between you and the Stonewood Grove HOA. I'd appreciate a chance to speak with you before this becomes more complicated." Jameson. I'd heard the name before, in the HOA's forged permission letter, where he was listed as the county liaison. Now he was calling me directly. I didn't call him back. Instead, I went digging. Turns out Edward Jameson was exactly what he sounded like. The kind of man who wears expensive cufflinks to meetings where the average salary caps out at 40 grand. He'd been in the county system for over 12 years, quietly facilitating cultural permits, historical preservation grants, community engagement funds, basically every gray area that gave Karen room to maneuver. I sent his name to one of my YouTube followers, a paralegal out of Bowling Green who loved digging dirt more than most raccoons. Within 24 hours, she sent me back 3 separate flagged audit records tied to Jameson's signature, 2 involving missing funds for cultural events, and 1 involving a conflict of interest investigation that mysteriously vanished before reaching hearing. The best part? One of the audit notes was labeled Oral Authorization Unrecorded EJ. EJ Karen's so-called verbal permission had a face now, and that face had dirt behind the ears. I added it to the case. Eli sent formal notice to the County Ethics Review Board, which hadn't been activated in 3 years. He practically forced them awake by threatening to file a motion in state court if they didn't investigate Jameson immediately. It worked. Within a week, Jameson was officially under review. Karen still hadn't made a peep publicly, but behind the scenes, her world was starting to buckle. Whispers from Stonewood Grove were leaking, residents emailing me anonymously, saying they were told everything was handled, that I'd agreed informally, and that HOA funds were being used for community cultural outreach, which now included items like catering, stage rental, and guest honoraria. One resident even told me she'd asked Karen point blank why her HOA fees had gone up last quarter. Karen allegedly replied, "You're paying for your future property value." Except that property value apparently involved trespassing on mine. So I kept filming. I uploaded a new YouTube entry titled "The Web They Wove." It laid out everything: emails, connections to Jameson, the forged letter, the TikTok spy, the lawsuit. I even included drone footage of the fence repairs, the defaced barn, the porch railing still missing a chunk from where some HOA tourist thought it'd be cute to sit on it like a photo prop. Then I did something I hadn't done before. I showed them the family Bible. It was a thick, leather-bound monster that had been in our family since 1867. I opened it to the inside cover, where 6 generations of Malones had signed and dated their births, marriages, and deaths. The ink had faded, but the history was there, etched in time, more real than any HOA charter ever printed. "This land isn't just dirt," I said into the camera. "It's blood, and you don't get to fake your way into it." That video cracked 1 million views in 2 days. By then, national outlets started sniffing around. A podcaster reached out for an interview. Local TV did a spot. An op-ed appeared in the Louisville Gazette titled, "When HOAs Overreach, One Farmer's Fight." And just when I thought things couldn't escalate further, I got a call from a number with a government prefix. This time, I answered. A young-sounding woman introduced herself as a regional investigator from the State Historic Preservation Office. "We've received several complaints and requests," she said, "including documentation of damage to a protected structure and alleged forgery of public documents. We're formally opening a case." I exhaled through my nose. "Took you long enough," she chuckled. We had to wait until it became politically risky to ignore. At least she was honest. I was fixing a split plank on the north fence when the first HOA board member called me. His name was Rich Delaney, retired dentist, part-time antique car enthusiast, and, according to his own words, not a big fan of confrontation. He sounded jittery, like he was calling from inside a closet. I just wanted to say I didn't know what Karen was doing," he said. "She never brought up your farm at the board meetings. Not officially." "Then how the hell did she fund all that?" I asked, wiping sweat from my neck. "Bus rentals, catering, fake printouts, permits. Somebody signed off." Rich paused. "She has discretionary funds. A lot of things get lumped into community engagement." Right. Turns out Stonewood Grove's HOA had a slush fund under the innocent-sounding category of neighborhood culture and development, which Karen managed directly. She'd used it before, for things like seasonal banners, gardening competitions, and once for a margarita machine at a block party. No one questioned it. But this time, people were starting to, because the lawsuit made it real, and the press made it ugly. Karen tried to silence the unrest with newsletters and community positivity breakfast, but cracks were showing. Board members like Rich started leaking minutes, internal chats, budgets, even a screenshot of a text thread between Karen and a contact named EJ County that read, "Don't worry, Travis won't push. He's a solo guy, no legal team. He'll rant online, that's all. Guess that aged poorly." Another message read, "If he escalates, we can go public with non-compliance complaints. Say the fencing's illegal, or accuse him of unauthorized guest housing." Heritage Dan's notes covered all that. I read it 3 times. Guest housing? Oh, right. My cousin Jacob stayed for a few weeks during hunting season. They were going to spin that like I was running a rogue Airbnb. Karen wasn't just bold, she was surgical. So I went surgical too. Eli, my lawyer, filed an official motion to subpoena HOA financial records for the past 3 years. We included specific flagged entries from the whistleblower board members and attached screenshots. The court granted it. Now, Karen couldn't just lie. She had to hand over paper. Meanwhile, more HOA residents came out of the woodwork, anonymously messaging me through Instagram, email, even handwritten letters slipped under my gate. One said, "I didn't vote for her. She ran unopposed. Nobody cares until we get letters about lawn violations or flagpole height. This whole thing is crazy. I'm sorry." Another message came from a woman named Teresa Alvarez. She joined the HOA Committee for Historical Engagement 2 years ago, but quit after Karen commandeered everything and refused to let her attend certain planning meetings. She would say things like, "People don't need all the paperwork, just the narrative." The narrative. That's what this had been about the whole time. Karen didn't care about property rights or legalities. She was building a story, a curated suburban fantasy where my farm played the role of local folklore, cleaned up and polished for brochures, and she was the architect. Problem was, architects need permits, and hers were forged. The real unraveling began when the local news finally got a copy of our subpoena filing. Someone in the courthouse leaked it. Next thing I knew, a morning anchor was saying my name with that half-shocked tone reserved for major storm damage or unsolved murders. Travis Malone, the farmer whose historic property became the site of a controversial HOA incursion, has now provided evidence linking Stonewood Grove's president to potential misappropriation of funds, forged documents, and a county official under ethics investigation. Boom. That was the day the HOA Facebook group, normally a place for arguments about Halloween decorations, exploded. Karen tried to go live. Big mistake. She opened with, "I know there's been some confusion." But someone in the comments typed, "You faked a county letter, Karen. That's not confusion. That's a felony." She ended the stream in less than 3 minutes. The next board meeting, 3 people resigned. 1 called in sick indefinitely. Eli got a call from a junior attorney representing the HOA's insurance provider. They wanted to explore settlement opportunities. Eli told them we weren't settling. Not yet. Then the final fracture happened. The County Ethics Board released a public statement. Edward Jameson was placed on unpaid administrative leave pending internal investigation. They didn't call it suspension. They didn't use the word corruption, but they used another word I loved: improper coordination with non-governmental actors. Translation: he let Karen play City Hall. Now she was standing alone, waist deep in financial hell, PR ruin, and a lawsuit that wasn't just civil, it was fast approaching criminal. And for once, I wasn't the one who looked like the crazy recluse. She did. I woke up at 5:30 that morning to a different kind of silence. Not peaceful, not eerie, just expectant. I brewed coffee and sat on the porch like always, the air thick with late summer heat. Cicadas whined in the tree line. My dog Bowie stretched out by my boots and blinked up at me like he knew something was coming. It came at 7:43. 2 Black County SUVs pulled up along the east gate, followed by a marked cruiser. Not fast, not loud, just steady. Purposeful, Karen always liked making an entrance. This time, she didn't get to. I walked out, camera already rolling, as the officers stepped out. One of them, a state investigator I recognized from a news clip last year, nodded and said, "Mr. Dursel Malone, we're serving a search warrant on the Stonewood Grove HOA Administrative Office. We'd like to confirm a few document references from your suit." I nodded once. "Everything I've got's in your inbox and a folder labeled larceny with laminate." They chuckled. One officer tipped his hat. 3 hours later, Karen Stafford was arrested on her own lawn. Not handcuffed yet, but escorted out, pale and stiff as a garden statue. Her immaculate blouse looked like it had been steamed that morning. Her sunglasses were missing. A neighbor filmed the entire thing from across the street. The caption on the TikTok read, "HOA Queen Dethroned, Justice for the Farm." It hit 1 million views in under 5 hours. The charges were formal and brutal: forgery of government documents, fraudulent misrepresentation of public authority, trespass by deception, misappropriation of HOA funds, willful damage to a state-recognized historical site. They even tacked on a potential charge for negligence leading to personal injury for the woman who sprained her ankle on my porch during that cursed Unity event. Karen didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't even flinch. She just stared straight ahead, like if she ignored the cameras hard enough, reality would blink away. But reality had arrived, wearing a badge. Back on my land, I watched it all unfold through the live stream one of the HOA residents had posted. His username was NotMyPresident89. Poetic. Within the week, the HOA board was placed under court-ordered audit. The HOA's insurance dropped them like a hot anvil. Karen's name was scrubbed from the website, and the county finally admitted they'd lapsed protocol in allowing oral permissions to influence event planning. That same week, a state heritage officer and a preservation architect came out to assess the damage to my structures. The porch needed full restoration, the barn wall unsalvageable without historic reconstruction, the fence split in 6 places, one of which apparently had been chewed by a therapy goat Karen brought in for ambiance. That part almost made me laugh. Almost, but the quote they gave me wiped away any humor. Restoration costs came out to over $850,000. Luckily, the court didn't blink. A judge issued a preliminary ruling holding the HOA financially liable pending full trial, calling their actions a staggering breach of public trust and private rights. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue it was all miscommunication. The judge cut him off mid-sentence. Miscommunication doesn't explain a printed program, a forged letterhead, and 60 unauthorized individuals standing on a private historic property without consent. That's conspiracy. I hadn't even asked for that word, but I liked hearing it in a courtroom. By then, the press didn't just care. They were camping on it. Newsweek ran a headline, "The HOA that tried to steal a farm." A legal YouTuber did a breakdown titled, "How to Lose Your Career in 7 Emails or Less." Even the governor's office issued a statement commending the resilience of private citizens upholding historic protections. Translation: they couldn't believe they got caught sleeping through this. I stood out on the property one evening with Eli, watching a crew install temporary fencing around the mill house. He sipped sweet tea like he'd just scored a touchdown at 70 years old. "You ever think you'd be the face of rural justice?" he asked. I chuckled. I thought I'd be the face of good bourbon and quiet living. But I guess this works too. Then I got a call from a number labeled State Office. I answered. The voice was warm, female, and direct. "Mr. Malone, we'd like to discuss elevating your property to full National Register status, including a permanent state grant for restoration." I stared out over the field, past the old sycamores, toward the barn my grandfather once hand-raised from beams. He carved himself. "Yeah," I said, "let's talk." It's been 6 months since Karen Stafford stepped off my land for the last time, escorted, silent, no longer untouchable. The weeds she once tried to call overgrowth have been trimmed back by a local restoration crew, funded not by HOA dues, but by a grant from the State Historic Preservation Trust. They awarded it to me personally, with a brass plaque and everything. I didn't want the fanfare, but I took the check. The porch is whole again. Same footprint, same wood grain patterns, every spindle carved from salvaged oak, matched as close as the hands of a master craftsman could manage. The barn has been restored. No more tags, no more "Whole Life" graffiti. Instead, a small hand-painted sign hangs at the entrance now. Malone Farm, protected, respected, remembered. We even had a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The mayor came. So did 2 state representatives. A busload of kids from a middle school in Lexington showed up for a history field trip. One of them asked me if I was the cowboy from TikTok. I almost corrected him, but I liked it too much. Now every Saturday, I give tours. Not big ones, just whoever signs up through the new site my niece built. We keep it small, quiet. I walk folks through the house, show them the old Bible, point to the framed letter from the governor's office hanging by the kitchen, and when we reach the porch, I always stop. I tell the story, not the viral version, not the clickbait. The real one. I tell them how people assumed authority they didn't have, how a woman in a position of community leadership forged documents, invaded property, and gaslit a county into believing her story. How the neighbors didn't stop her until they saw it wasn't just about a fence or a gate. It was about ownership, legacy, consent. One time, after a particularly quiet tour, a young woman stayed behind. She stood on the porch steps looking at the spot where that railing had snapped all those months ago. "I grew up in a HOA," she said. "Never realized how much control they had until my mom got fined for putting wind chimes on the balcony. Said it was audible decor." I nodded. "They think silence means agreement," I told her. "But sometimes silence just means no one's listening yet." She smiled, took a picture of the mill house, left a tip in the jar I keep on the rocking chair. I still keep the camera systems running, still file every document in triplicate. The HOA was officially dissolved 2 months ago, by a vote from the remaining residents, those who hadn't already moved out. They hired an external firm to handle communal maintenance now. No more elections, no more Karens. As for her, Karen took a plea deal. No jail time, but she lost her home. Her name's no longer on any HOA documents, professional licenses, or boards. She's not allowed to act in any administrative or fiduciary capacity for a public or private organization for the next 10 years. Last I heard, she moved to Florida. Of course she did. I kept one of her original private HOA meeting reserved signs, framed it, hung it in the outhouse. Fitting. Now the farm is quieter than it's been in years. Not empty, just at peace. The kind of peace that only comes after a storm that tried to unearth your roots but failed. I still wake up before dawn, still pour that same bitter coffee, still sit on the porch and listen, not just to the wind through the sycamores, but to the land itself. It's an old voice, older than any ordinance or deed. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it just remembers. And now, so does everyone else.